Hi, I'm Chris Carpenter with Merito. Today we put together a blog that I wanted to share with everyone, and it's all about the return on investment, ROI. So every software vendor they'll hand you an ROI number. And I sell software and I've given many people an ROI number, and I'm recording this video specifically because you can build that ROI number yourself. And yours will probably hold up way better than ours ever will. I published this article specifically because it lays out that model, and there are specifically 5 numbers. 4 of them you should be able to scrape together fairly easily, probably within a single afternoon. And it's all linked below, so it should take about 5 minutes to read. But what this article does not tell you is where each of the number physically comes from, who to ask, which system it lives in, how long it takes to pull. That's what I'm trying to add today with this video. We sell tools from various vendors, and we pass through our partner discounts from our partner affiliation, but then also because we do bulk buying, and that's like our whole model, right? And then we throw services on top of that to make sure that the tools are adopted within your organization, and hopefully down the road, you'll end up loving the tool so much and you'll end up buying more licenses from us, and you grow your software development lifecycle, your dev centers, you're producing better, higher quality software, faster, less defects hit production, all the good stuff. That's the model, right? And I'm still telling you to throw out the ROI slide, including the one I give you. My sales team is going to kill me for saying that, but what I want you to do is calculate your own, right? Calculate your own, and there's no reason to compare it to somebody else's ROI number because they do things differently than you. Our number was calculated against somebody else's program, and it just doesn't make sense for you to include that on your ROI slide. So that's the whole reason why I'm saying you should calculate your own number with your own algorithm, and just don't include somebody else's just because they do business differently. So here is how it usually goes, in my opinion. So someone in finance will ask where a number came from, and the answer, it's an honest answer, but usually it came from the product page for whatever software tool you're buying, and then you move on, right? Someone accepts that. And the reason why it hurts you later is once that number is in your case, like once that starts looking soft, then every other number gets a second look. And so it can compound on itself. If you say that you release software 300 times faster, that's kind of wild. For some people that might be true. And then they'll scrutinize that number, and then all the other 10 different numbers on that ROI deck, they just don't look as good because now they're under a microscope. So the line I want to pull out of this section here is this one. So your own numbers will be less impressive. Let's be honest. They're not going to be 300% faster software releases, but they will be much more difficult to argue with. Right, and that's the whole idea. We want to have solid numbers that we can back up. 6 months from now, I want you all to hopefully they're not even looking at the ROI numbers. Hopefully the numbers are so great that you're not even looking in the past. You're looking forward. But if you're trading a bigger number that you can't defend for a smaller number nobody can attack, right? That's the idea here. And we want to be realistic. We want to hit our goals. A case that closes modestly and survives the room beats a spectacular one that dies in it, right? The 5 numbers are on the screen here. You can read them faster than I can say. So let me tell you how to source each one of those instead. So number 1 is the cost of one regression cycle. That's tester days times the loaded rate, plus the environment time, plus the coordination of overhead that nobody books to that specific project. So go to your PMO or your delivery lead and ask them for a timesheet export covering your last 3 regression cycles. and that'll give you the tester days that no one is estimating. And then get the loaded rate from finance rather than from a contract, right? What you're actually billed for instead of what the contract said, because a lot of times that contract rate understates it, and the finance team already holds that loaded figure for headcount planning. Environment from the basis team or your overall cloud bill is probably where we would get that from. Then there's a line that most people miss. We need to include the functional analysts, the people who get pulled in for validation, because they're the expensive ones, right? Ask those analysts directly. Their time books to the business center cost. So it never appears on the IT project export. It is the most commonly missing import that I see, and usually it's the biggest one. Budget half a day for all of this, and if your timesheet data is clean, then 2 days if it's not. Number 2 is cycles per year. So that's all of the support packs, all of the enhancement packs, functional releases, and all of those emergency transports that trigger a partial regression anyway. Ask your basis team for the transport import history into production for the last 12 months. It should be just one query, and it's the actual record rather than anyone's recollection. So that'll get you the actual number. Count the planned releases in one column, and then the emergency imports in another. And so that emergency column is the one that everyone forgets, unfortunately. No matter, it's a big scramble, and time gets tracked a little loosely, but keep that in a separate column. And then multiply the cycles by number 1. And then you have your annual regression spend. Probably have that number for the first time that you've ever had it. I'll buy you lunch if you tell me that is not the first time you've seen that number. Just fill out the form, contact me, tell me that I owe you lunch. I will gladly buy you lunch. Do that equation before you go head into your steering meeting instead of doing it in the meeting. So make sure you go to your steering meeting with that number in hand, because it adds up, and that number will stop people in that room. You bring that number to them, it will be a shocker to them. I guarantee it. Number 3 is your real change rate. So take the last 3 transports and work out by hand which of those test cases, exercise, and object that actually changed. You would be so surprised how much your real change rate is not what you expect it to be. So you pull the object list for the last 3 transports, and you hand it over to whoever knows your entire test suite, the test estate, whoever knows that best. Ask them to mark which test case touch each of those objects. This is one of my favorite exercises. You're looking at your coverage, and I expect you to receive some pushback. And I expect it also to take a day or 2 for that pushback to come, because they're going to take the list and say, yeah, I can get it to you. And then they're going to actually go look and be like, wow, that's a lot of work to get that number. And both of those are the point. That's why this article says to take this slow, because it is irritating work. And that irritation is the data point. We're trying to put a number to that irritation. And time it. I want you to start the stopwatch and see how long it actually takes to get this data. If one person needs 2 days to answer a single transport touched, you've just measured the reason your regression scope never shrinks. So put that duration on a slide. Figure out how long it takes to find that data that is one of your metrics you're going to bring into your steering committee. It does more work than a percentage does. It's giving the actual metric, the actual number. So this is number 4, and it is meant to be a reduction that you would be able to defend. Every single one of these numbers, I want you to go into that steering committee and actually be able to back it up. So pick a figure that you're comfortable saying out loud to your CFO, and something that you will stand by 6 months later, because you've got the data to back up the number, and hopefully it changes. Hopefully it changes for the better, depending on what products you're buying or what you're trying to invest in. Hopefully there's a return, but you'll have the equation and you'll know how to calculate it. Hopefully we can get the data to you faster because you've got a process in place now. But write that number down before you open any of the vendor material. So I want you to show this to the steering committee before you even go into whatever tools you're trying to buy. And we don't want the vendor's ROI metrics to anchor to yours, right? And this is why it matters, because if the case closes at half of the vendor's claim, if your numbers are more accurate, if there's a big enough delta there, then you never have to argue about the vendor's claim. It's always about yours, right? And so that's worth saying out loud in the meeting. Number 5, this is the price of one escaped defect. Hard to calculate, right? I think you might have a good idea, like a production defect is bad and sometimes it's worse than others, but it's usually the largest line item in this entire equation. If a defect reaches the customer and if it's bad enough, then it's big enough. But usually that's the one that takes a working session outside of an afternoon. And it's usually the one that actually wins the business case. So how do we price that escape defect? So I want you to start with a realistic failure, something that could happen, not something that's super catastrophic, but maybe it's a pricing condition that posts wrong. Perhaps it's a delivery that you're not able to create. Maybe that authorization quietly blocks a posting, but that posting is at month end, and that is a big problem. Pick one that your team will recognize. You want something that they'll be able to resonate with. Usually a failure that people remember in the past is much harder to wave away than a hypothetical one. Then you have the 5 inputs, and each one of those 5 inputs has now come from a different person. And that hits a little differently because you got 5 different people backing up the story. They're giving you data. You're just the messenger at that point. Business interruption is hours the process runs degraded times what an hour is worth, right? Finance should already own what that hourly figure is, and they can usually produce that revenue per hour for an order to cash process. They can usually calculate that faster than the IT team can produce anything. Rework is developer and functional analyst time to diagnose, fix, retest, and then of course retransport under pressure, no less. Your last severity 1 ticket, your Sev 1, should give you all of that data. Hopefully you're tracking your root cause and remediation. But ask for it and then count the number of hours that it takes to actually get that answer and see what was logged against that ticket. Your hypercare is the extra staffing that you're going to have to carry for the weeks after the bad release. You should be able to probably pull that from the actual staffing from your last go live rather than the planned figure. But because the planned figure, I don't know, I just feel like those are always lower than the actual. So if you've got that in the last go live, then pull that one. And then your schedule cost applies to anyone with your delivery commitments and the penalty clauses. So your contracts or your program office usually has that language, and you'll want the number rather than the summary of the clause. Hopefully it has a number. You also have your audit exposure, which is what it costs if you're unable to show what's changed and what's been validated, and then who accepted the residual risk, right? So you need to ask the internal audit team and figure out what a finding is in that area, a cost that the company has absorbed before is the best way I could put that. But that'll allow you to know, and they are usually glad that someone asked. I don't know. In my experience, they're glad someone asked, but run that once at the conservative interruption estimate, and then compare that to your annual regression spend. In a regulated and delivery committed environment, that escape defect line roughly lands at an order of magnitude above the testing savings. I think I don't have a number for this, a quote, but I think it's 10 times conservatively. Might be more. So that's why it's so important that you put this on the first slide. Most business cases lead with the savings and they bury this, which I don't know, I think that's backwards. So here we've got 3 incomes, and I think every one of them is useful. So you're not just running this as an exercise to get a yes. The first outcome is the business closes comfortably on the numbers 1 through 4. They buy it and use number 5 to decide how fast you roll it out. If there's some serious ROI, let's get that into production. The second outcome, the case only closes when you plug in the vendor's best case percentage. I don't think you should buy it at that point. If that's the most impressive number, probably shouldn't buy it. Sales teams would kill me for saying that, but I don't think your cadence is there yet. And it pays back on programs running transports monthly or faster, right? Revisit it when you get there. And the third outcome is going to be the business case closes on number 5 all by itself. And that means that the exposure has been sitting on your books for years with no figure against it. And to me, the tooling decision is now the smallest conversation. So you have to watch how that lands in the room, and it changes who's doing the talking. Before your next steering committee, bring 1 slide with the 5 numbers on it, no logos, none of the vendor branding, no benchmark charts, no logos. Like, we don't need the logo because the numbers, they do the work for you. And if you can't fill in number 1, then that's the finding. It is worth reporting on its own. You do not need the rest of the deck to make that point. You just don't. And a team that cannot cost its own regression cycle cannot tell you whether any testing investment is working. That's a strong statement, right? Including the ones that you've already bought. You might have made bad decisions year over year, and if you can't tell me what it costs to do regression, you've got bigger problems. To close out the article, I want to put the link below, and it's got the full model written out, so you can read it, you can apply it, you can take it, you can run your own numbers. I hope you do. I hope you also fill out the contact us form. I hope you can use this data. If you have any ideas on future videos, let me know. Also, here to be helpful, here to be a resource, and also if you want a second set of eyes on your numbers, if you want help putting together your ROI deck, let me know. You bring your release cadence and your last regression invoice, and we can sit down and try to get as many of the numbers put together with you. We'll also tell you when the numbers say wait. Right? That's one of the things that we pride ourselves on. We don't want you to just spend more money. Right? Love for you to spend money with Merito, but we want to add value. We're there to be a trusted advisor within your organization. We want to earn that seat, and this is one of the ways that that we do it. We're here to make sure that you make good decisions for your business, and we take a great amount of pride in that. So with that, I hope you like this video. So please do like, comment, subscribe. We've got a lot of other good videos in the hopper, and we want to make sure that you get access to all of them. So thank you so much.